On a remote island, a team of hunters faces off against enormous, monstrous ants. Their leader stands his ground, declaring they must hold the line at all costs. Retreat is not an option. But things take a turn for the worse as the hunters are quickly overwhelmed. The leader starts to black out, one of the ants tearing into him, and death seems inevitable. Just then, a man with incredibly potent healing abilities appears, saving him at the last second. The leader panics, realizing the healer is now in danger too, but before disaster strikes, another warrior intervenes. This new arrival calls on his teammate, who immediately jumps into action, demolishing the ants with ridiculous ease. The first group watches in awe, realizing they were never the main event. These new fighters are top-tier warriors, the elite of their kind. The powerful duo wipes out the red ants without breaking a sweat, but just as they finish, a monstrous white ant emerges. Rather than retreat, they prepare for battle, leaving the wounded leader in the healer's care. The fight escalates as the team works together to tear apart the massive ant. One of them rips off its limbs mid-battle and uses its own severed arm to deliver the final blow. But before they can even breathe, an entire horde of these white ants appears. It turns out the behemoth they just defeated was only the beginning. But these top hunters don't flinch. One powers up with crackling electricity while the other unleashes raw muscle, tearing through his own clothes as he bulks up. Their battle is so intense that it can be seen all the way from the city, where a man named Choi watches with relief, knowing the reinforcements arrived in time. Choi has his own problems. The city is overrun with ants, but he and his squad are handling it. With a burst of flames, he incinerates the creatures, leaving only the colorless one standing. His team works together like a well-oiled machine to clear the rest. Then we learn the backstory. 10 years ago, mysterious portals connecting to other dimensions suddenly appeared across the world, unleashing terrifying creatures. Only those awakened as hunters could stand against them. Hunters are classified by power levels, with S rank at the top and E rank at the bottom. The catch? Once their abilities awaken, they can't improve. No amount of training will make them stronger. Fast forward 3 years, and a construction site has now turned into a full-fledged dungeon raid location. A man stops to grab a drink before heading in, only to be surprised when an old friend calls out to him. His friend is shocked to see him back, knowing he had quit being a hunter. The guy admits it's true, but life hit him hard. His wife is expecting their second child, and he needs cash fast. A dungeon raid seemed like the best way to make quick money. At the same time, another hunter arrives. His name is Jin Woo, and he's already infamous. The other hunters have nicknamed him the weakest hunter in existence. As he enters, someone asks why everyone seems to know him. For a second, it sounds like he might be famous for his strength, but it's the opposite. He's earned his reputation for being completely hopeless in battle. The guy once ended up hospitalized from injuries sustained in an E-rank dungeon. If there were a rank lower than E, he'd be in it. Ironically, this terrible reputation works in his favor. If someone like him is invited to a raid, it means the dungeon must be easy. Jinwoo overhears every harsh word said about him, but he doesn't argue, because every bit of it is true. He's just that weak, so weak that a woman named Ji calls him out on it. Turns out, Jinwoo knows her from a past mission, but there's no time for pleasantries. She's more concerned about his latest injuries and demands to know what happened this time. They sit down, and Jinwoo admits, rather embarrassingly, that he got hurt in the lowest-ranking dungeon. Worse yet, his team didn't even bring a healer because they thought no hunter would be careless enough to get injured there. Unfortunately, they underestimated the disaster that is Jinwoo. Ji gets annoyed on his behalf, but Jinwoo already knows the truth. It's no one's fault but his own for being so weak. As the team prepares to enter the dungeon, a guy named Chio steps up and suggests he take the lead for this expedition. No one objects, so he takes charge. Before heading in, Jinwoo gets a friendly warning to stay close to the group so he doesn't get hurt again. His only weapon is a dull, weak knife with barely any magic power. It's all he can afford with his meager earnings. Still, he promises himself to do his best. Elsewhere, the president of the Hunters Association, Juki, wraps up a meeting with government officials. They warn him about something called a dungeon break, which must be prevented. Yet, at the same time, these officials demand a share of the materials recovered from dungeons. Since hunters make their living by selling those items, Juki doesn't object. The crystals they obtain from magical creatures, known as magic gems, are a valuable source of income. Back in the dungeon, Jinwoo somehow manages to get his hands on a magic gem. He's thrilled, but his excitement is short-lived when he has to fend off a goblin. The moment he attacks, his blade shatters into pieces. The goblin retaliates, stabbing Jinwoo, and instead of fighting back, he just stands there screaming. Luckily, the big guy from earlier rushes in, ignoring the useless girl, and saves him. As she heals Jinwoo, he can only watch as the rest of the team does all the work. Magic gems from high-ranking creatures can be forged into powerful weapons for fighting even stronger foes. Dungeon monocrystals can also be used as weapons, but they aren't nearly as effective as magic gems. The government is desperate to harness these resources as a clean, powerful energy source. Compared to traditional power, it's safer, more efficient, and far less polluting, practically the ultimate renewable energy. Because of this, dungeon hunters have become invaluable assets. Meanwhile, the team celebrates their victory after defeating the dungeon boss. Jin Woo, once again proving himself the weakest, has taken quite the beating, and Ji is still healing him. She questions why he became a hunter at all if he keeps getting injured, convinced he's going to meet a tragic end one day. Jin Woo apologizes, but his words don't mean much, she's still worried about him. The team divides the loot, but there weren't many monocrystals, so the payout is disappointing. Jin Woo feels disheartened, especially when he realizes all he got was a measly E-rank gem. He starts questioning whether it's even worth putting his life on the line for just one guy. Then, someone points out a massive hole, grabbing everyone's attention. They gather around, trying to figure out what it is. It looks like a cave, but since they're already inside a dungeon, it's more likely to be something far rarer, a second dungeon within the first. They've heard of these before, but it's still an unusual find. Their suspicion is confirmed because, even after defeating the dungeon boss, the place hasn't started closing up like a normal dungeon would. That means there's something deeper inside, possibly more valuable loot. Song Cheol steps up as the voice of reason, suggesting they follow the proper procedures by reporting the discovery to the association and waiting for further instructions. But the rest of the team isn't thrilled about that idea. Reporting it would mean giving up whatever riches might be hidden below. Park, one of the hunters, dismisses the concerns, pointing out that it's just an F-rank dungeon. He brings up his wife and kid, explaining that he needs the extra money to support them. Song Cheol understands their reasoning, but he insists on getting everyone's opinion before making a decision. Each team member speaks up, some eager to explore further, while others acknowledge the obvious danger. In the end, it's a tie, 6 in favor of pressing on and 6 against. That leaves the final decision up to Jin Woo, the only one who hasn't spoken yet. He's painfully aware that even a D-rank dungeon is a serious risk for him, but with his father missing, he's the only one providing for his family. His mother is hospitalized, and his sister has dreams of attending college. He can't afford to stay broke forever. Taking a deep breath, he chooses to move forward. Elsewhere, in a testing facility where people are being evaluated for magical potential, recruiters are eager to scout new talent. A high-ranking hunter, Choi, has given orders that anyone with promise, regardless of age or background, should be recruited immediately. Meanwhile, outside in the city, a thief snatches a purse and makes a run for it, almost knocking over a girl in his way. But without hesitation, the girl effortlessly retrieves the stolen purse as if it were nothing. That girl is Cha Han, a renowned S-rank hunter. Despite her fame, she struggles with the overwhelming attention from fans. Unable to deal with the crowd, she makes a dramatic exit. Back in the dungeon, the group has been walking for 40 minutes without finding anything worthwhile. They only have about 20 minutes left before the dungeon portal closes, cutting off their chance to leave. Jinwoo apologizes to Ji-hai for dragging her along because of his vote, but she's more frustrated that he doesn't seem to care about his own safety. If an attack had landed just a little higher, he would have been dead. Even healing his wounds was difficult. She scolds him, and he realizes she's only worried about him. Feeling guilty, he asks how he can make it up to her, and she jokingly suggests buying her a meal. Jinwoo is caught off guard by her straightforwardness, but before they can continue, the group finally stumbles upon the boss's chamber. The enormous doors ahead feel ominous. This isn't a typical dungeon boss room. Kim refuses to leave empty-handed and insists on pushing forward, with the others following close behind. Meanwhile, back in the city, a group of new hunters is going through orientation. They watch a video featuring Gun Hee, explaining that dungeon portals have existed for over a decade, yet many mysteries remain unsolved. He emphasizes that being a hunter is dangerous, even for the most skilled fighters. The key to survival? Absolute caution. Despite the warnings about the dangers of this dungeon, the group seems to have completely ignored them, stepping into a mysterious and uncharted room. They act like tourists on a theme park ride, unfazed by the eerie atmosphere. The statues inside are ancient, likely over a century old, and Jinwoo finds himself drawn to the largest one. Meanwhile, Ji starts feeling uneasy. The silence is suffocating. Everyone wonders where the boss could be, and Song Shel's gaze locks onto a strange-looking magic circle on the floor. However, his attention shifts to a tablet inscribed with ancient commandments dedicated to some forgotten god. But something else seems to be bothering him. Ji suddenly claims she saw the massive statue's eyes move, as if it was watching them. Jinwoo dismisses it as paranoia, but before anyone can react, the doors slam shut with a deafening bang. Panic sets in, and one unlucky guy, who never wanted to enter in the first place, tries to flee. He barely takes a step before one of the statues cleaves him in half in an instant. The team is paralyzed with fear, not just because someone just died, but because it happened so fast they realize they don't stand a chance. Jin Woo's eyes dart back to the colossal statue, silently praying that it stays still. But to his horror, it looks right at him. His mind flashes back to his past. He's no stranger to life or death situations. His first mission left him stranded and nearly killed. Another time, he almost starved in a maze. Even a weak magic beast once injured him badly enough to land him in the hospital for weeks. For someone like him, even the lowest tier dungeons are a death trap. Unlike most hunters who earn better gear by selling gems, Jin Woo scrapes by with a cheap knife, and if it ever breaks, he has nothing left but his bare hands. His clothes are worn, full of holes, and he's constantly mocked. Trapped in this deadly profession that barely pays, his only survival tactic is outsmarting every threat around him. Back in the present, his instincts scream danger as he senses the power radiating from the giant statue, but he has no time to warn the others. Without warning, the statue unleashes a devastating beam from its eyes, reducing everything to ruin. The team is thrown into chaos, unable to comprehend what's happening. Ji trembles in fear while Jin Woo wonders how things went so wrong so fast. They're trapped, with no escape. Even if he gets lucky today, he knows deep down that his luck will run out eventually. Song Shell commands everyone to stay still, realizing that moving will trigger another attack. Jin Woo freezes, paralyzed by fear. Song acknowledges Jin Woo's earlier warning, admitting that his shout saved them all. But then Jin Woo notices something horrifying. Song is standing there, calm and collected, despite the fact that he's just lost an arm. Jin Woo quickly moves to stop the bleeding, as Ji is paralyzed with fear. Song, who's experienced his fair share of B-rank dungeons, realizes something terrifying. This statue isn't just A rank. It might even be S rank. His eyes dart to the ancient tablet, which warned about worshipping a god or facing punishment. That's when Jin Woo pieces it together. This statue is the god the tablet was talking about. 10 years ago, these strange gates started appearing worldwide, bringing chaos and supernatural events with them. Some people awakened incredible abilities, becoming hunters tasked with clearing these dungeons. Once a hunter's abilities manifest, they never change. Meanwhile, at school, Jin Woo's sister talks to a classmate about how her brother is constantly getting injured. The girl can't believe that someone like Jin Woo is a hunter, scoffing that even she would make a better one. Back in the dungeon, Song tries to strategize a way out, but one impatient man snaps. He just joined a famous guild and refuses to die here. Believing in his own absurd speed, he makes a break for it. And yeah, the guy is fast, until the statue instantly disintegrates him, leaving nothing but his twitching legs behind. That brutal display makes it crystal clear, if the statue wanted them dead, they'd already be corpses. But for some reason, it hasn't wiped them out yet. Jin Woo suddenly understands, it must be connected to the first commandment, worship God. With a new resolve, he rises to his feet, a determined fire in his eyes. Song watches, both worried and impressed, realizing that Jin Woo refuses to die here. Locking eyes with the statue, Jin Woo stands his ground, and just as it's about to attack, something changes. He takes a gamble and orders everyone to bow. His logic? If they show proper respect, the statues might hold back. No one else has a better plan, and with raw fear controlling them, they all drop to their knees, praying this insane idea works. The air is thick with tension, but then the statue shifts, it moves. And not just a small twitch, it stands all the way up. Panic surges through the group. One overconfident guy, mistaking this as a sign of success, jumps up in excitement, completely ignoring the warnings. But Jin Woo isn't fooled, he senses there's more to this nightmare. Then, the second commandment reveals itself, praise God. A brave long-haired man steps forward, hands clasped in prayer, hoping to appease the statue with his words. At first, it seems to be working, the monstrous thing slows its movements. But Jin Woo isn't convinced. And then, boom, the statue stomps the poor guy into the ground, proving him dead wrong. A terrified girl gets crushed in the chaos, and everyone scatters in pure terror. Harks, thinking of his family and swearing not to die here, makes a desperate move, but another statue slices him apart like nothing. Meanwhile, Jin Woo is running with Ji, mind racing for a way to properly praise this terrifying god. Because let's be real, this thing isn't a god. It's a demon in disguise. But leaving Ji behind isn't an option, especially when everyone else is already dropping like flies. Jin was in full panic mode, scrambling for any clue. He checked everything the statues held, then had a realization. He told everyone to move toward the ones holding instruments. They followed his lead, and it became obvious, these statues didn't attack. Instead, they started playing their instruments. But when Jin Woo reached his statue, nothing happened. He figured it wouldn't work with two people, so he left Ji behind. As soon as he did, the statue began playing. He bolted to find his own, but nearly got crushed in the process. Then someone screamed. Jin Woo had landed in front of the wrong statue. It slammed its shield down on him, and Ji lost it, yelling his name. He was still breathing, but barely. The giant was ready to finish the job, but Jin Woo refused to go down. Just as the massive figure was about to stomp him out of existence, a statue song echoed through the space. Jin Woo had made it in time, and he finally understood the meaning behind praising God. The giant backed off. Taking a seat, Jin Woo called out to Ji, saying he was fine, but she was frozen in shock. His foot was gone. He tried to reassure her, but she wasn't buying it. She was determined to heal him, yet her own strength was giving out. Everyone stood in stunned silence, realizing the raid had turned into absolute chaos. Someone muttered that losing an arm was karma for Song, their leader, since he had led them down this path. Some thought that was too harsh, but Song took full responsibility. Jin Woo, however, was focused. There was still one last commandment left. Just then, a massive altar rose in the middle of the room. Jin Woo recognized it from legends, used for offerings and sacrifices to the gods. The third commandment was all about proving one's faith. Kim suspected it required a human sacrifice, and all eyes turned to their leader. After all, he had led them here. Song stepped up. As Song approached the altar, fire erupted, and he asked if there was anything else he needed to do. Jin Woo, ever the strategist, called for help to reach the altar, determined to figure it out. When they got him there, more flames appeared. Song demanded answers, but Jin Woo hadn't cracked the puzzle yet. Song reminded him that the gate had been open for a week already, which meant the statues would move again soon. Jin Woo realized they had limited time. Once a dungeon stayed open for several days, it would trigger a full break, allowing creatures to pour into the world. The only way to stop it was to defeat the dungeon's boss before that happened. Meanwhile, back in their world, Gina visited Jin Woo's mother, checking in on her, but things weren't looking good. In the dungeon, Jin Woo called over the more timid survivors, believing that every person needed their own flame. As expected, more flames appeared when they stepped up. As the massive door creaks open, tension fills the air. Everyone's on edge, suspecting a trap. Suddenly, the other statues begin moving toward them, sending the group into full-blown panic. But Jin Woo stays calm, assessing the situation like the genius he is. He quickly figures out that as long as they keep their eyes on the statues, they won't move. Trusting his judgment, the group follows his lead, and shockingly, it works. Everyone strains to keep their focus locked on those eerie figures, but fear takes hold of one girl. She panics and bolts toward the door. The instant she steps out of the circle, her flame vanishes, yet she somehow makes it out. The door begins to close slightly, confusing Song Cheol. Weren't they supposed to stay inside the circle? Naturally, he looks to Jin Woo for answers. Jin Woo, though just as baffled, doesn't stop thinking. He notices the blue flames have been fading over time. One disappeared when the girl escaped. The first rule was to worship, the second to show reverence, and the third to prove faith. It clicks, this door is a trap. The entire situation is designed to mess with their heads, feeding them false hope. Before he can act, another desperate fool makes a run for it. The same thing happens, his flame dies out, the door closes a little more, but he escapes. Kim starts considering an exit as well, but Jin Woo warns everyone that if too many people leave, there won't be enough eyes left to keep the statues frozen. He reminds them that as long as they stay put and maintain their gaze, they'll survive. Once again, Jin Woo pieces it together. Those blue flames aren't just for show, they're counting down to something. When they're all gone, maybe that's their real chance to leave. Kim isn't convinced. He argues that they might get trapped once the timer runs out. He never expected Jin Woo, the weakest among them, to have kept them alive this long, but at the end of the day, he has a family waiting for him. He can't gamble on Jin Woo being right. Apologizing, he bolts for the door. With one more person gone, there aren't enough eyes left to keep all the statues in check. The creatures begin moving once more. Jin Woo braces himself, determined not to go down without a fight. Things have never been this bad before, but then, Song Cheol does something unexpected. He tells Jin Woo and Juhee to run. He's figured it out, if even one person stays by the altar, the door will remain open. Since Jin Woo and Juhee still have long lives ahead of them, he insists they should escape while they can. He asks Juhee to look after Jin Woo, but she's frozen in place. Her legs won't move. That's when it dawns on him, she must have exhausted herself trying to heal Jin Woo earlier. Jin Woo makes a snap decision. He orders Song Cheol to take Juhee and leave. She needs someone to carry her, and Song Cheol is the only one who can. But Juhee refuses, she'd rather stay behind. He hands her his gem, telling her to buy herself a meal and save his change for when they all make it out. She still won't abandon him, but before she can argue, Song Cheol apologizes, then knocks her out. Song Cheol shoots Jinwoo a regretful look, mutters an apology, and makes a break for it with Joohee in his arms. At least Jinwoo can take solace in knowing he's the only one left to face the inevitable. His only regret? Not securing a solid life insurance plan. With grim determination, he grips a sword, refusing to go down without a fight. If he's going out, he's taking at least one of these monsters with him. The statues don't hesitate, they go full berserker, tearing into him mercilessly. That doesn't matter to these monsters. They hack away, and when one of them slices off his arm, pain unlike anything he's ever felt surges through him. His scream is raw, but his fury is even stronger. It shouldn't end like this. He worked too damn hard to get stronger, and for what? Just to be torn apart? The statues don't let up, battering him, slashing, crushing, but he refuses to let go of the fight. Not just some weakling, he's a survivor. He wants to scream in sheer defiance, but he doesn't even have the strength for that anymore. The moment a blade pierces his chest, he knows it's over. Yet, rage still burns in him. His thoughts shift back to the ones who fled earlier. They said they couldn't take it, but deep down, they were just cowards. Selfish. He has people waiting for him too. He wants to go home, just like they did. But here he is, the only one left to die. His body is failing, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Maybe, in some twisted way, it's better that only he has to suffer. But then another thought creeps in, how much of a hypocrite is he for thinking that? He doesn't want to die. He's barely hanging on when the final blow comes crashing down. In his last moments, he just wishes he had one more chance. Then, just as everything fades, the final blue flame flickers out. A sudden notification appears, as if from nowhere. It announces he has completed a secret quest, Courage of the Weak. A reward awaits, the chance to become a player. But there's a catch. If he doesn't accept, his heart will stop in mere seconds. With no time to think, he slams the yes button. Next thing he knows, he's waking up in a hospital bed, completely intact. No missing arm. No gaping wounds. He swears he was torn apart, but his body is perfectly fine. His mind reels, was all of that real? Just when he's trying to make sense of everything, a guy named Wu shows up, introducing himself as the manager of the Hunter Association surveillance team. Alongside him is a purple-haired guy named Kang. They don't immediately explain why they're there, but they do drop some crucial news. Jinwoo was unconscious for 3 days straight. And surprisingly, Jinhoo and Song survived too. Song, however, lost an arm, which means his career as a hunter might be over. Meanwhile, Jinhoo is mentally shattered and undergoing psychiatric care, though things aren't looking too promising for her future in hunting. Only 6 people manage to escape that nightmare of a double dungeon. Being a hunter is dangerous as it is, but what happened in that place was beyond anyone's worst fears. The real mystery, though? When another guild arrived later after getting the survivors' distress call, they found nothing, no temple, no statues, just Jinwoo. The survivors all gave identical accounts of what went down, and since their stories lined up perfectly, no one doubted them. It was an unbelievable situation. That's when Wu drops a theory. He looks at Jinwoo and asks if he might have experienced a second awakening. Typically, a hunter's power is fixed at the time of their awakening and doesn't change. But on rare occasions, a second awakening can happen, breaking past previous limits, even reaching the legendary S rank. Jinwoo can't help but get excited at the idea. Wu then brings out a device to measure his power, hoping to confirm this theory. If the survivors were telling the truth about facing an incredibly powerful creature, a low-ranked hunter wouldn't have stood a chance. Jinwoo braces himself for the results, but things take a disappointing turn. His mana score comes back as a pathetic 10. Even E-rank hunters usually have at least 70. This result puts him closer to an ordinary civilian than a hunter. Wu and his team admit their mistake and leave, unable to investigate further since the entire dungeon had mysteriously disappeared. Jinwoo is frustrated, but what really confuses him is that nobody mentioned the strange floating screen in front of him. He's the only one who seems to see it, and after some experimentation, he realizes it functions like a touchscreen. He recalls receiving a message about becoming a player, but before he can dwell on it, his sister interrupts. Concerned for his well-being, she checks on him. Jinwoo asks if she can see the panel, but she sees nothing. Trying to figure things out, he asks how messages work in games, and she, confused by the question, simply tells him to check his inbox. At that moment, a notification appears, his first daily quest. It's a strength training mission. Once he's alone, more panels pop up, explaining that this system exists to help him improve. It lists objectives like push-ups, sit-ups, squats, and running. The real kicker? If he fails to complete the quest, there's a penalty waiting for him. Jin-woo starts thinking this whole situation has to be a joke since he's stuck in the hospital with no energy to deal with anything happening outside. Meanwhile, Woo informs the chairman that Jin-woo didn't experience a second awakening. The incident remains a mystery, so they decide to classify it as a special case and investigate further. At the same time, Mr. Choi tells CHA High that she'll be leading a B-rank raid as an instructor. This mission is meant to train new recruits, and he believes there's no one better for the job. CHA High doubts her ability to teach, but Mr. Choi reassures her she just needs to fight as she always does, and the recruits will learn by watching. He further explains that while the Hunter Guild is one of the top 5 in the country, they don't hold much weight internationally, since hunters can't level up on their own. Improving their teamwork is crucial. Elsewhere, another gate opens, and observers grow impatient, wondering when the hunters will arrive. Back at the hospital, Jin-woo drifts off to sleep as the clock strikes midnight, only to be jolted awake by a sudden notification he didn't complete his quest. The ground starts trembling violently, and before he knows it, he finds himself in a vast desert. To make matters worse, a massive, terrifying caterpillar-like creature looms before him. Another notification appears, revealing he's been given a penalty quest, survive for 4 hours. At the hospital, the nurses panic when they realize Jin-woo has vanished without a trace. Unbeknownst to them, he's in another dimension, running for his life. The giant caterpillar isn't alone, more of them appear, closing in fast. With 2 hours still left on the clock, Jin-woo is struggling to stay alive. The hospital staff continue searching for him, their concern growing. Meanwhile, Jin-woo pushes himself to keep going, knowing he's running out of time. As the countdown reaches 0, he suddenly finds himself back in the hospital. The system confirms that he completed the penalty quest, but he's so exhausted that he vomits and collapses on the spot. Later, Jin-woo reassures his sister that he's recovering well and might be discharged soon. Dressed in his tracksuit, he steps outside for some fresh air. Meanwhile, in another location, Ji receives an urgent request to join a raid due to the sudden appearance of a high-ranking gate. With other guilds occupied, the pressure is on, but Ji hesitates. However, she soon gets some uplifting news: Jin-woo has finally woken up from his coma. Ji is all jittery as she heads to visit Jin-woo, but the nurses just shake their heads, saying he's out running again, just like every day since he woke up. Outside, Jin-woo reflects on the past 4 days and everything he's learned. First off, those pop-up windows he's been seeing? Yeah, they're real, not just some weird hallucinations. Completing his daily quests grants him 3 types of rewards. The first is full recovery, which he uses now to shake off the exhaustion from training. Then there are ability points he can allocate to boost his stats. Jin-woo's getting a solid grip on how this whole system works, and his inventory screens are proving to be a game changer. He takes a moment to process just how bizarre his life has become. It's like he's inside a real-life RPG. While he's busy testing his screens, people around him just stand there gawking. Still, he finishes his daily quest and, as a reward, gets a random loot box. Today's item? A mysterious key. Usually, he just gets useless junk like pens and bandages, so this is definitely something new. Then, a notification pops up, saying the key is for teleporting to an instant dungeon. Jin-woo has no idea what an instant dungeon even is, but considering everything he's experienced so far, he figures it's some sort of event meant to help him grow stronger. In this world, gates are constantly opening, and they even have news reports tracking them. Before anything else, Jin-woo visits his mom and recalls the day he found her unconscious. She's suffering from a rare sleep-related condition called final rest, which started appearing when gates first emerged. Some believe it's caused by long-term exposure to mana. Determined to help, Jin-woo worked tirelessly to become a hunter so he could pay for her treatment. He once told his sister, Jinna, that he'd earn enough money to take care of their mom, but she was terrified. She knew just how dangerous hunting was. Jin-woo tries to reassure her, promising that things are different now and that she just needs to trust him. But deep down, he knows the truth: he used to be weak, and his rewards reflected that. Now, he's training harder than ever, pouring all his ability points into strength. To prove it, he casually crushes an apple in one hand, a small but clear sign of his growing power. He's done being powerless. This time, he's getting stronger, and nothing's going to stop him.